Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to discuss a topic that often makes us slightly uncomfortable but is also unavoidable if we want to grow as a nation: what India should learn from China. Now, let me clarify at the very beginning. This is not about glorifying China, nor is it about undermining India. Every country has its flaws, and China has plenty of them. But it is equally true that over the last 4 decades, China has transformed itself from a largely agrarian, struggling nation into the second largest economy in the world, with global influence in finance, manufacturing, technology, and infrastructure. So, instead of competing with emotions, let us compete with wisdom. Let us learn, adapt, and build. First and foremost, let's look at the financial and economic front. China's GDP in the early 1980s was not much higher than India's. But today, China's economy is nearly 5 times bigger. How did this happen? The answer lies in long-term planning and execution. China opened itself to foreign investment in the 1980s and simultaneously invested heavily in manufacturing. They became the factory of the world. From small toys to smartphones, from textiles to high-end machinery, they mastered mass production with quality and low cost. India, on the other hand, still struggles with bureaucratic hurdles, land acquisition issues, and policy unpredictability. For India to catch up, we must simplify doing business, reduce red tape, and encourage large-scale manufacturing clusters. The Make in India initiative is a step, but the difference is that China doesn't just announce policies, it implements them ruthlessly. Another lesson is infrastructure-led growth. China borrows and spends heavily on infrastructure, but that investment creates jobs, improves logistics, and eventually attracts industries. India, by contrast, spends a smaller portion of GDP on infrastructure, leading to bottlenecks in transport, electricity, and water. In finance, China has also created massive state-owned banks that are aligned with national priorities. Credit flows where the government wants growth. In India, our banks are often stuck with non-performing assets and lack strategic direction. Now let's talk governance. China runs on a one-party system, we in India run on democracy. And let me be clear, democracy is our strength, and it should never be compromised. But democracy does not mean indecision or inefficiency. The Chinese government excels at long-term vision. When China makes a 30-year plan, it sticks to it. For example, the Belt and Road Initiative was not a short-term political promise. It was a carefully crafted strategy to extend Chinese influence. India, by contrast, often gets trapped in short-term populism. Our policies frequently change with governments. We need bipartisan consensus on key sectors like education, infrastructure, and defense. Unless these areas are insulated from political shifts, we cannot expect long-term results. Another important point is policy discipline. China prioritizes execution over debate. In India, we sometimes debate endlessly but struggle to implement. A balance between healthy debate and effective execution is something India must perfect. Now let's step out of economics and into everyday life, civic sense. One thing travelers notice immediately in China is the relative cleanliness of cities, the discipline in public transport, and the obedience to rules, whether it's traffic, recycling, or punctuality. In India, despite numerous campaigns like Swachh Bharat, civic sense is still lacking. We litter, we honk, we break traffic rules, often thinking, chalta hai. The Chinese may not enjoy the same personal freedoms we do, but they compensate with social discipline. This creates a smoother public life. Imagine if our citizens simply followed traffic rules, respected queues, and valued public spaces. The government wouldn't need to spend crores just cleaning what we should never dirty in the first place. Now comes the most visible lesson: infrastructure. China has built world-class highways, high-speed rail networks, airports, and smart cities in record time. They construct in months what sometimes takes us years. For example, China has over 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. India is only now beginning its first high-speed rail project. Chinese ports are among the most efficient in the world. Their urban metro systems are fast, affordable, and widespread. Why is this important? Because infrastructure is not just about convenience, It is the backbone of economic productivity. Smooth transport means goods reach faster, businesses save costs, and citizens save time. India has made progress in highways, airports, and metros, but the scale and speed of China's execution is what we must aim to replicate. We must reduce bureaucratic delays, reform land laws, and adopt time-bound accountability in projects. Another key area: education. China produces millions of engineers, scientists, and skilled workers every year. Their universities are climbing global rankings, and they are investing heavily in research and development. China spends nearly 2.5% of its GDP on R&D. India spends just about 0.7%. That gap directly affects innovation. Moreover, China has integrated vocational training into its system, ensuring that even those who don't pursue higher education acquire useful skills. In India, many graduates remain unemployed because what they study is not aligned with market needs. India must invest not just in expanding education, but in improving quality, research culture, and skill development. Otherwise, our demographic dividend could turn into a demographic burden. China has also mastered the digital ecosystem. Companies like Huawei, Tencent, Alibaba, and BYD have become global giants. China controls its data, protects its markets, and builds its own versions of technology instead of depending entirely on imports. India has done well in IT services and digital payments, but we still import the bulk of our hardware and critical technologies. For true independence, India must invest in homegrown tech companies, support startups, and build domestic manufacturing of electronics, semiconductors, and green energy solutions. Apart from these major points, there are subtle aspects of Chinese society we can learn from. Urban planning. Chinese cities are built with foresight, wide roads, proper drainage, green zones. Indian cities often grow haphazardly. Health infrastructure. China rapidly builds hospitals, as seen during the COVID crisis. India needs to strengthen its public healthcare system. National pride. Chinese people, regardless of class, often share a strong sense of national pride and collective effort. In India, we sometimes let divisions of caste, religion, and region weaken our unity. So, what should India learn from China? The answer is not to imitate blindly, but to adapt wisely. We must take their strengths: long-term planning, infrastructure building, manufacturing focus, research investment, and civic discipline, and implement them within the framework of our democracy, diversity, and freedom. China shows us what determined governance and collective discipline can achieve in just a few decades. If India combines that efficiency with our democratic spirit, entrepreneurial energy, and youthful population, we can not only catch up with China, we can even surpass it. The real competition is not about who waves a bigger flag, but about who gives their people a better life. And that is what India should learn from China. Thank you.